We're going to talk a little bit about this thing called the man box. And I want to pay particular attention to the limits of what this man box represents for men and boys. So, the essential question is what does it mean to be a man, or what is manhood? And what I would suggest is that we use as a definition that manhood is simply recognizing your humanity and recognizing all of the scopes of what it means to be human, and that your gender is secondary to the expression of your humanity. And so what typically we have as the problem is when we talk about manhood, we also have to talk about the context that helps to define what manhood is. And so in the United States, we have this concept of the rugged individualist, or the man who can do things by himself, for himself, without the aid of any resources or any other person. And so, and all too often we look at some of the archetypes that point or demonstrate these philosophies of manhood. And we typically point to either business leaders, or we talk about politicians, or we talk about athletes as these beacons of manhood. But what we don't take into account is that in all of those situations, those individuals did not and are not able to be successful all by themselves. And so they too also come from a context where their gifts and talents are a part of what makes this society, or makes this particular conversation relevant and important. And so when we think about men, we have to think about the fact that they too come from a context, and that these leaders that we typically point men and boys to are operating with, although they may be the best at what they do, they also are operating within teams and networks of individuals who are supportive in allowing them to be their best as individuals. But they're always, always, always within a context and a part of a context. So when we start talking about this manhood, what we start to recognize is the context actually creates this thing we like to refer to as the man box. And in this box, what we say is that there are a small number of emotional experiences, a small number of ways that men and boys can interact with each other, that if you step outside of that, then that actually disqualifies you for this social construct called manhood. And so men and boys all know that you're supposed to be strong. Boys and men are supposed to be strong, that they're supposed to be tough, that men and boys aren't supposed to cry, right? So those are all things that men and boys know because of the context. And so there are two ways that this context gets built for men and boys. And it gets built for them in these two ways, because I don't know how to respond to boys and men if they are outside of the box. And so for men and boys who are outside of the box, either because of their genetic makeup, because of their culture, because of their social upbringing, any boy or man a boy or man who doesn't fit into this box gets ridiculed. And so there are systems in place to try to force men into this limited existence of behaviors and attitudes. And so, first of all, is what gets said to men and boys. What gets said to men and boys is actually the part that causes the most harm for boys and men. And what gets said to them is by well-meaning folks, right? So coaches will say these things that are very harmful to boys and men. Uncles, other men will say these things that are very harmful to boys and men, not recognizing how harmful they are to boys and men, and ultimately how they injure girls and women. And so, all too often, you'll hear coaches or uncles tell, or sometimes fathers or male figures in boys and men's lives that say to them, don't act like a girl, right? So they'll say stuff like, let's go, sissies, or pull up your skirt, or stop being a punk, or don't punk out on me now, or don't cry. Why are you whining? And all of these things that say to boys and men that the worst thing that you can be is a female. The worst thing you can be is a girl or a woman. And so why is that problematic for boys and men? Well, for many boys and men, the two people that are the most important to them in their lives are their parents. One of the parents, happening oftentimes, is a male. And the other time, the other parent typically is a female. And so how do you teach boys and men that the people that they care about the most, the women in their lives, their sisters, their mothers, that they are not to be modeled after, or not to be folks that are held up in high regard? How do you tell boys and men that without that having a direct backlash on girls and women? And so what typically happens when these things get said to boys, they get drummed into boys' heads, boys start to disassociate the difference between being female and being human. So they start to say that, oh, these are girls, but these aren't humans. They start to say to themselves, and maybe they're not as articulate as I'm being now, but they start to say to themselves, there's a difference between those women and girls and the women and girls in my life. And so this disassociation allows for games like, it's not Miami Vice, it's one of these Vice games where part of the game is where you assault and you victimize women to get points as a part of the game. What gets said to boys and becomes a part of their psyche allows for really bad behavior by boys and men because towards women and girls. Because what I'm doing is not to a human being. I'm doing this to a thing. And so boys and men really get this mindset or this way of being that is very problematic for girls and boys, and it's very harmful to men and boys as well, because these are people that they care about. These are people that are a part of their lives. And so how do you disassociate or how do you augment or separate the difference between your mother being or your sister or cousin being female, which is the worst thing you can be as a man, and them being who they are? And so that's the first thing that gets said to boys and men about that. The next is what gets done, and so this becomes the capstone for everything that is said. All the jokes, all the teasing gets capsulated in the physical retribution that tries to keep boys and men in this box. And so this is where hazing comes in. This is where games like Smear the Queer come in. This is where a number of contact sports where the objective is to try to see how much pain you can endure as a part of being a man or being masculine. Now, what I'm not saying is that there aren't times that people need to persevere beyond their physical limitations. What I am saying, though, is that if the drive or the central theme of going beyond those physical limitations is to impress someone else, or is imposed on someone as a method of socialization, making sure that they act right within the society, then I think that that's misappropriation of talents, of ability and focus. And so boys and men often feel as though they have to fight. They feel that they have to be able to defend their territory, because what has been taught to boys and men is that if you don't, then you will be a victim. And if you are a victim, you are a girl. And if you are a girl, that's the worst thing you can be. And so when we talk about this man box, we really have to look at how do we refocus this conversation on what it means to be male, what it means to be a man, what does it mean to be in relationship with human beings. And we have to expand, because our human relations and our human experience is much more involved than it is just with this simple box. And so one of the things that I'm most proud about is my father's ability to relate to his sons the importance of expressing all of your human emotions and being fully human. And so as we look at school shootings, we look at gang violence, we look at things like the knockout game, where people are trying to say, look, I can't fit into these narrow boxes, so I'm going to take laws and I'm going to take the definition of manhood into my own hands, and they create these really obtuse ways of being. And so as we look for creating better men and boys, we have to create better spaces, better context, expand the human experience so that boys and men can be healthier in their relationships with each other, as well as with the women and girls in their lives.